And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Saturday, November 16th, 2024. And there are a number of things going on here coming up here through the early week. We have low pressure, not especially strong, but over the Gulf. And then we have high pressure trying to establish itself over the northeastern quadrant of the mainland. That'll become a more dominant feature by the time we get into early next week. In fact, by Tuesday afternoon, there very well may be a 1050 millibar high sitting here over the lower Yukon. In the transition of this, we do have some colder air coming southward that will enhance some of the offshore outflow gap winds here along the Gulf Coast. This system that came inland with the front, there's still going to be some remnant moisture. We have IRF conditions along the Alaska Range, upper Copper River Basin along the Elkan border, upper Tanana Valley Sunday morning. Perhaps a sliver of IFR conditions up against the intercoastal mountains there east of Wrangell and Hyder. And then back to the west, some IFR conditions there in the Bering Strait. There will be a potent system that's going to work its way across eastern Russia on up into the Chukchi Sea. It's going to have a lot of wind with it and some heavier snowfall. There are winter storm watches in effect along areas of the northwest coast from Point Lay all the way down to almost Nome. And that would be for Monday night into Wednesday morning, and I'll highlight that more as we get into that time frame. For Sunday afternoon, still a sliver of lingering IFR conditions along the Elkan border from around just east of Mentasta Pass, and a sliver of IFR conditions in the intercoastal mountains here of the Panhandle, all the way from Chilkoot and White down to Hyder. MFR conditions, marginal visual flight rules here across the North Slope. And then as we get into Monday, we still have that sliver of IFR conditions along the Elkan border, upper Tanana Valley, east end of the Alaska Range, and also along the intercoastal mountains here of the Panhandle from Chilkoot and White all the way down to Hyder. Then to the west, here's the hints of this system rapidly. It's going to come in very quickly. IFR conditions there, far western Aleutians. By Monday afternoon, that area of IFR conditions will be expanding. There's going to be a kind of pseudo-warm front, very windy front with moist, warmer air coming into the cold air that's going to be over the Chukchi Sea, Bering Strait. We're anticipating late Monday night, Tuesday into early Wednesday, blizzard conditions in areas of the western northern Seward Peninsula, especially here, the western Brooks Range, Noatak, Kivalina, Selawik. These areas here are going to have strong winds, and that upslope glide of the moist air is going to produce heavy snowfall, 6 to 12 inches of snow with potentially near blizzard or blizzard conditions. So stay tuned to later forecast, as already there are winter storm watches for these areas of the west and northwest coast, and they will likely be upgraded to some sort of either warning or advisory, but still a pocket of IFR conditions lingering here on the far east end of the Alaska Range into Monday afternoon, though we expect VFR conditions across the Panhandle, much of the mainland, as the trend will be for colder temperatures, especially seeping southward, settling in over south central with clearer skies. Looking at past conditions on Sunday, VFR is expected there through Anatuvik and Adigan passes, but MVFR conditions just on the other side of the north entrance there in the North Slope, so keep that in mind. And then as we drop southward, Lake Clark, Merrill, kind of the west arm of the Alaska Range, MVFR conditions on Sunday. Rainy Pass starting out IFR on Sunday, becoming MVFR. And that'll be the theme rounding out through the central eastern Alaska Range. IFR conditions, at least in Sunday morning, becoming MVFR. Windy Pass, Isabel Pass, further east, Mentasta Pass, also IFR conditions early Sunday, giving way to MVFR conditions. And then as we drop in down kind of toward the Copper River Valley, but way up the Matanuska Valley toward the glacier there, Tanita Pass, MVFR becoming VFR. And right now, Portage looks like it should generally enjoy VFR conditions on Sunday. In the northern Panhandle up there at Chilkoot and White Passes, VFR to start off Sunday morning, becoming IFR as we progress through the day, later afternoon and evening. So freezing levels aloft. The air is pretty chilly over the mainland. We have had surface freezing line, central Bering dropping down into the Alaska Peninsula and just south of Kodiak Island up into the northeastern Gulf Coast, inner channels here of the Panhandle. Little bump to 2,000 foot aloft freezing levels near Haida Gwaii behind me. This is the hints of that push of a little warmer air kind of being drawn northeastward by this quick moving and potent low that's going to cross up into the Chukchi Sea early next week. That's what's going to bring the stormy conditions here to the northwest and western portions of the mainland coastlines, including the Bering Strait and probably St. Lawrence as well. So looking at icing potential on Sunday, we have some lingering moisture, light precipitation, but even as you get up into the the cloud, the moisture-bearing clouds that have some precipitation or just super cooled water droplets above 3,000 feet here and through the middle Yukon and extending into the upper Tanana Valley along the Alaska Range, down here in the northeastern Gulf Coast, Cape Suckling, to just outside of Yakutat Bay, and then some pockets of moderate icing possible in both the southeast and northern parts of the Panhandle above 4,000 feet. Then way out toward the central Aleutians, that push of a little warmer air coming in from the west and southwest, could be some moderate icing above 6,000 feet there in the central Aleutians. So here is the jet stream level winds, 30,000 feet. There are a couple of notable jet cores. One is south of the Gulf in the North Pacific, northwest winds upwards of 125 knots. And then back here toward the west over the Bering into Kamchatka Peninsula, we find winds out of the northwest, 120 knots central Bering, and up over 150 knots coming up here through eastern Asia, and that's what's helping to provide the dynamic lift there that will be associated with the low that works its way across eastern Russia. At 9,000 feet on Sunday, have still a low circulation here over the Gulf. Strongest winds coming in off of the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, some areas south and east of there, upwards of 60 to 75 knots. West side of the state, still northerly flow turning northwesterly, 30 to 40 knots there off of Bristol Bay and Kuskokwim Bay. And then for the 3,000 foot level, here we have this low circulation over the northern Gulf. We have colder air being drawn down across the mainland interior. So you'll continue to see colder temperatures in this area with that high building. As I mentioned, by Tuesday afternoon, we could see a 1050 high here over the lower Yukon. So that means morning lows are going to be well below zero here across the central east, central interior. And then this northeast to north flow down along the west coast. There comes the surge of winds associated with that low out there in eastern Asia, crossing up into eastern Russia. That'll be the next main weather maker here through the Bering Strait and along areas of the west-northwest coast as we go through late Monday night, Tuesday into Wednesday morning. So looking at the greatest threat for turbulence on Sunday, of course, with that cold northwest flow, we have storm force winds still here, lower Cook Inlet, and then outside there of Kennedy Entrance. There could be isolated severe turbulence in this common spot with that cold northwest flow. Surface to 6,000 feet, broad area of moderate turbulence for the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, maybe back toward Nunavik Island and the Pribilovs around St. Paul. Surface to 4,000 feet, and then some pockets of isolated moderate turbulence, maybe up there around Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, down along the west side of the Seward Peninsula through the Bering Strait to the eastern half of St. Lawrence Island down to St. Matthew, generally surface to 3,000 feet on Sunday.